and all I could see was 3 headlights. And this car came like a bat out of hell. It was coming towards me. My God, what's going to happen here? You talk about a knock on the door. My wife got a knock on the door, and it was my sergeant. It was to tell her that I was in hospital, but it was nothing to worry about. Hello and welcome to a new series of podcasts with myself, Dave Galloway, called Life After the Pips. What's it about? Well, Life After the Pips is going to concentrate on people who have worked for the majority of their lives within the public service, what impact that working in the public service has had on their private lives, their family lives, themselves, mental well-being, but also how people have approached retirement as well. And how scary is it to be doing a job for 30 odd years and then coming to not do it anymore? And what can we do to get around it? How can we support people who are in that position by using people who've been through it, so we can then take their experiences and hopefully support the public service. So what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be looking at myself and the career that I've had, but also going to look at other people from the fire service, the ambulance service, the police service, and what they've done and the impacts it's had on them. But also want to make it a little bit of fun as well. And each guest that I have on, we're going to be looking at some of the funny incidents, the funny stories that they've been involved with. Obviously completely sanitised, not highlighting anybody in any way whatsoever, but just show the light-hearted side of what the emergency services and the public service in general go through. So the first episode is about me. Those who know me know how shy I am. They know how difficult this is for me to talk. Just talk, to be fair. But what I'm going to do is just talk about what I did. How did I become a police officer? Why did I want to become a police officer? And why did I last so long? So I joined Cleveland Special Constabulary, in fact, in 1985. And I was a special constable for 5 years. 5 years is a long time to volunteer to do a job, because that's what it was. Special constables are volunteers. Despite the fact that they've got all the powers of a police officer, the only payment that they had at that time was we were given bus fares. Even though we drove to the stations, we were given bus fares. So even less money. But it was the experience that you could gain from doing that. So I did that for 5 years, and in 1990, I applied to join Cleveland Constabulary, as it was then, as a police constable. So I wanted to take that step up because I thought at that stage I had enough experience, and I wanted to, let's not beat about the bush, get paid for what I was doing rather than just my bus fares. And I was lucky enough to start in July 1990. Within Cleveland, and I did my basic training at the Durham Training Centre at Akeley Heads, which is now a housing estate. There was some very, very difficult incidents to deal with when I first started, getting used to you're the one who's responsible, you're the one who they look at when you get there. If somebody sees a police officer, and when the police officer arrives, the automatic feeling is, this person's now going to take control. And yeah, that's what's expected, but you can't be trained for everything. And meeting a lot of people as I was doing the footbeats in the area, because I know footbeats, just to explain what footbeats are, uniformed police officers going on and walking and speaking to people on the estates, in the towns, in the shopping precincts and things like that. I appreciate that people are very busy now, but footbeat is the backbone of policing, where you actually speak to people. You have to speak to people, and getting speaking to people, and I would be talking to somebody and they would be asking me how long I've been in and how I'm getting on and all the rest of it, and I'd walk away. My colleague would say, "Oh, they were all right. Who were they? And I haven't got a clue. So you're walking away, you're supposed to be the font of all knowledge, but you're walking away thinking, oh dear, I can't even remember who that was. But having been brought up in Middlesbrough, family still live in Middlesbrough, I still live over there, did get to bump into a lot of people that I knew. A lot of people was, some of them who were on the, should we say, the wrong side of the fence when they bumped into me. Never had an issue. They were a bit surprised that it was me that they bumped into. But one of the things that I wanted to base everything that I did on was about being fair and about being open. It's a very, very performance-driven organisation in them days, and there was a lot of pressure on people, both as a team and as an individual, to support the team, to make sure that you achieved these performance targets. Are performance targets right for a public service? You've got to have some sort of measure, but basing it on the number of times that you stop a vehicle, the number of fixed penalty tickets you issue, the number of people you arrest, is that the way forward? Because it takes away discretion. It takes away the ability to say to somebody, so if I stop Adam and Adam's riding a pedal cycle with no lights on, am I really going to issue a ticket to Adam? Or am I going to say to Adam, you need lights on. A, it's the law, and B, it's for your own safety. And if Adam listens to what I've said, then we can move on. There's no need to give Adam a ticket, because Adam's going to have that thought, well, didn't like him. What an officious little so-and-so he was. And if Adam comes across an incident where an officer needs help, is Adam going to think, oh, I'm keen to help? Or is he going to think, I remember dealing with Galloway and he gave me a ticket? So from that point of view, it's how you come across to people and it's how you deal with people. I eventually moved away from frontline way back in 1999, so last century, and I worked in a newly established central communications centre as a PC, doing the dispatching and the call handling. And again, even that was a learning curve. You think you know it all, but when you go in there, some of the situations that the public ring in about, and you think, gosh, how do I deal with that? What's that? Or a funny incident, I took a call, and it was one of my first 999 calls, and you're thinking, here we go. And the first line from the caller was, they're breaking in. So you start off on your computer with a 2-finger typing, saying, here we go, what's the address? So you can get the address on, the type of incident, get it sent over to the dispatcher so they can get somebody on the way. And I'm getting further information. Can you see anybody? Are you safe? Yes. All this sort of thing going on. Then all of a sudden, the hands are coming through the fireplace. Sorry, what did you say? The hands are coming through the fireplace. Cancel units. Dear me. So it was a call from somebody who unfortunately was suffering some sort of an episode, but I wasn't to know that. And it's so difficult to deal with people, particularly on the phone, because you can't picture exactly what's going on there. And sometimes you're sending cops, as a dispatcher, you're sending cops into jobs where the information isn't as full, isn't as thorough as it potentially could be. But that's a bit of a mixture of people suffering from the trauma of being the victim or the witness in the incident, as well as the person not taking enough information or not being able to get enough information. But again, working in the control room, knowing the areas, was a big benefit, particularly if we had jobs where we needed to have certain approaches. So I think that helped me as well. So from there, a couple of years in control room as a call taker and a dispatcher, I then joined the Central Police Training and Development Authority, which was a sort of private organisation where you were seconded to. So I was still a police officer, and I was seconded to Akeley Heads in Durham. to carry out the basic training in relation to people joining the police force, and we met them on the Sunday night, started on the Monday morning, and what we did was we had scared rabbits caught in headlights on the Sunday night. 15 weeks later, they were marching onto a parade square in the best uniform, confident and ready to go out to work with a tutor, to work with somebody on a one-to-one, to learn the job, on the job training. Great, because that's the best way to learn. But people need to understand that when a police officer turns up, they might be the first time on their own. It might be the first time that they go to a job, even though there's 2 officers there. And you don't want to be turning round to people and saying, it's my first time. You want to come across as confident. You want to show that you can do that job. And I guess that's part of even as a trainer, you're looking after people. You're dealing with people's performance in the class, how they're doing in the exams that we set them on a regular basis. But you're also dealing with them as people. And in that, what you're doing is you're looking at the stresses and strains, because it was a residential course for them. They're looking at the stresses and strains of what's going on with the family. How are they coping being away from the family? How are the family coping being away from them? So from that point of view, it was important, even at that early stage, to sort of make sure that they were getting that support. But you had to be in a position where you built up that trust. You were the trainer, you were in charge of the class, but you had to build up that trust with the individuals within the class to say to them, if you've got an issue, come and talk to me in confidence, and I will help you to get through that. And I remember we had a couple of students who I wasn't sure whether they'd actually get to the end of the 15 weeks, but we managed it by working together, working with other trainers. So it was difficult, and people will say to you, and we get this a lot in any public organisation, you become a trainer because you can't do the job anymore. I became a trainer because I love training, and I will look back on my career and say training was one of the best postings that I had. I learned a lot. I learned a lot on how to deal with people, how to get the point across and the aims and objectives of the courses. And it helped me towards my promotion because I had to learn the law. I had to learn it to such a standard that I could pass my sergeant's exam and my inspector's exam. Only 2 exams that you had to do, but they were tricky, they were hard, and you had to make sure that you knew your stuff inside out, upside down. And that's exactly what I did. So I was lucky enough to come back to Cleveland Police Training School and work in there for a year before I went back out onto an operational role at Middlesbrough, which was probably one of the most challenging districts within Cleveland Police. And quite early on, getting back into operational setting, I was given acting sergeant duties, then made temporary sergeant, and in 2006 got my first promotion to the rank of sergeant, which was good, and it was one of those things where you thought, that's a step forward. It really is a step forward. But was it? Because all the extra responsibility. If you talk to people, people will say to you, the sergeant is the most pivotal role within the organisation. If you don't have good sergeants on the team, the inspector may struggle. The inspector might not be able to run the team as effectively. But then it does put the pressure on the sergeants. You've got to have somebody that understands what the PCs are going through, that can support the PCs. But you still had to work within that performance framework. So as much as we used to hold the PCs to account in their monthly performance reviews, we were held to account by the inspector and the chief inspector about the role that we were doing as the first line supervisor. We talk about trauma and we talk about incidents quite early on in my career, and this is a long time ago, but in 1994 I remember being on patrol in an area of Middlesbrough called Hemlington. Hemlington was quite a deprived area. The people there were, let's just say, were not the friendliest towards the police. And it was affectionately known as the twok capital of the North East, in fact, of the world. And when I talk about twok, I'm talking about joyriding. Why they call it joyriding, I don't know, because it's not a joy for anybody. If somebody's had their car stolen, it's theft. But we were looking in Hemlington. We were up in Hemlington dealing with me and a close colleague dealing with an incident, and a call came in that there was a car flying about. Part of the registration had been obtained, and they thought it was a stolen car. So we'd finished the job that we were doing, and we had a look round into some of the, and it was in Hemlington is in blocks, and we went into the F block, and we came across a car with 4 or 5 lads. So we decided that we would interact with those. So we parked the police car up on the road, and then spoke to the youths, got the details. It wasn't the stolen car. Good indication was they were prepared to speak to us. That's always a good start. And then in them days, we had 2 radios. We had a pocket set, which was personal to us, and it was on a UHF system. But in the car, we had a VHF system where we could get on a channel and do some checks, which were a little bit more secure at the time. So we'd got the details of these 5 lads, got them on my clipboard, and I said to my colleague, I'll go back to the car and I'll do the checks on them from the car. So walking back to the car, going to the driver's door, opening the driver's door, and just the noise that came from in front of me, and all I could see was 3 headlights, and this car came like a bat out of hell off a bend, and it was coming towards me, and I froze, and I thought, my God, what's going to happen here? I dived into the car. The other car hit my police car with such force it ended on the grass. It cleared the pavement and ended on the grass. I thought I was going to die. Honestly, it was such a horrible feeling. And one of my legs got trapped in the door, and I remember getting taken to hospital, which was Middlesbrough General in those days. And you talk about a knock on the door, and my wife got a knock on the door, and it was my sergeant. And it was to tell her that I was in hospital, but it was nothing to worry about. She came down to Middlesbrough General, and she, the first she seen of me, I was wired up. Wires coming from everywhere, bleep, bleep, bleep all over the place. And what had happened is, apparently, in the ambulance on the way down, I'd gone into shock. So they were treating it very seriously. Luckily, I got over that. I got through that. 2 lads were arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, and they ended up getting found guilty of being in a stolen car. And one of the questions that I got asked was, the reason why we can't go through with a specific charge against one person is you couldn't identify who was actually driving at the time, because with the scientific examinations that they did, they picked up 2 different materials. So there was definitely at some point during the time it had been stolen, it was 2 different drivers. Imagine the scene. You stood there, you've got 3 headlights coming towards you, you think you're going to die, and you're getting criticised for not being able to say who was driving at the time. It did take me a bit by surprise, but anyway, they did get convicted of an offence, and they got a good hard slap on the wrist, which obviously makes you feel better. And it gives you that understanding at that time about what members of the public must feel. I was always a little bit naive, to be honest, before I joined the police, because I always thought, why wouldn't anybody support the police? Why wouldn't anybody give a statement to help the police? Because they're not getting the support that they need. The police can't protect them 24/7. And if you put your head above the parapet, somebody is going to take a swipe at that head on a regular basis. And so it does give you that understanding. And going through that personally and going through that from that point of view, it was steep. Again, a steep learning curve, but you had a little bit of compassion then. You could understand why people, and instead of coming across as grumpy knickers because somebody won't give you a statement, so you can get somebody interviewed and potentially prosecuted for committing an offence, you were in a position where you had that understanding. I was diagnosed with PTSD at that stage, but I was supported by friends, colleagues, slightly different to what you probably get today, but the support I can't say was anything but absolutely outstanding, and it really did help me through. I even went to a place in Harrogate, which the police still have, which was called St Andrews, which is like a convalescent home, and I felt guilty being there, to be fair, because other people had visible injuries that you could see, but mine was stress, and I did feel a little bit out of sorts. At that time, there was people there from, it was still called the Royal Ulster Constabulary then, and they were telling me stories about checking the cars before they get in them, just to make sure there's no bombs in them, and what impact it had on their life. And looking at it, and I'm sat there thinking, do I deserve to be here? Should I be here? Am I misusing the services? But it helped me. It got me through. And to be fair, once I'd been there, I don't think I'll look back. And working in other areas, looking at the changes, and with anything in a public service, the police are no different. They come up with an idea, and then 5-6 years later, somebody else will reinvent that idea for a promotion or something like that. And it goes round in cycles, it goes round in circles, and it always comes back to what we should be doing, which is the basics. And that's what it should be about. It should be about providing that service and making sure that people can rely on you. But I appreciate, as I was getting towards the end of my career and I became a shift inspector in charge of a response team, you do, again, look at it from the point of view as, yes, there's a lot of pressure on you from sometimes higher ranks. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You should have done this. You should have done that. Well, hang on. You weren't there at the time. You can only base it on what I was facing at the time. And the pressure on officers is staggering. It's worse now, I think, to be fair, than it was even then. But it was staggering in them days as well. So it was very difficult. And in 2018, I was approaching the milestone of retirement at the grand old age of 54 years old. Retirement sounds great, sounds wonderful. You're not going to have to do your 4 on 4 off 12-hour shifts, 2 day shifts, 2 night shifts. You're not going to have to be slave to the radio. You're not going to have to be thinking about saying to somebody, no, you can't have that annual leave. So you're the bad person. You're the nasty inspector because you wouldn't let them have the leave and things like that. But it was scary because it was the unknown. I'd become institutionalised as a police officer. And I don't say that lightly, because the first thing I did when I retired was apply for a job with the police. As if that comfort blanket couldn't be taken off me. I had to have it back on me. I needed it. I couldn't operate without it. And it was difficult for somebody to turn around and say, no, we're not going to give you the job. And I remember one of the interviews, I went for 3 interviews. One of the interviews, the feedback I got was, that was the best interview, but why does a retired inspector want that job? I was livid, absolutely livid. How dare they? It's my choice. It's my choice, surely. And if I was the best person for the job, why wasn't I given it? But that was a turning point for me. And I spoke to a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, who said to me, well, look, you've got a lot of skills, you've got a lot of qualities. Why don't you use them to your benefit? Why don't you think about starting your own company? And I did. And it started off with, again, the institutionalisation, if that's such a word, had an impact on me, because all I thought I could deal with was people who were wanting to join the police, because I understood what the job was about, what the tests were about, what the assessments were about, how to approach them, how to help potential clients to get through them. But then I started looking outside the police and started dealing with people who were wanting a job in the fire service, wanting a promotion within a company. So it expanded from there. And one of the skills that I'd got from training school was a training certificate. And I built on that and got a certificate in education. And then a smoggy got a master's degree. I ended up applying for a position on a master's degree course, which was all going to be done online with Sunderland University. I'd never gone to university. I didn't have an honours degree. So I was that concerned. I wanted to do it. So I rang the people and they said, well, no, it doesn't matter. And that's where I learnt about transferable skills. And some of the stuff that I'd done in the police allowed me to be at a certain level. So they said, because you haven't done an honours degree, we'll ask you to fill in a competency-based application, answer the questions, send it back into us, and we'll let you know if you've achieved the standard, and you'll be invited on the course. Within an hour of submitting the application form, I got a phone call that said, you're on the course. Well, you need to sort your student finance out, which I did. 55, 56-year-old and you're sorting student finance out. But you got your 20% discounts at certain shops and what have you, so it had its advantages, even though I'm still paying it back now. So I studied for and achieved a master's degree in management, and I got it with merit, which unbelievably proud. I'm really, really proud of that achievement. So the podcasts are about policing, not just policing, public service. So I'll be hopefully having guests from the fire service, other colleagues from the police, ambulance service and other public sector workers. And what I want to do is to offer reassurance to people about the commonality of issues that are faced across the board and how they can be approached and how people can be supported through those potential issues and dealing with those issues. And there are a lot of organisations out there that can do that, but also by just having your own little network as well, that can be very, very impactful and very effective. It would be nice if you did send some questions in, and if there's anything in particular that you're really interested in or is really causing you concern and you're happy for us to discuss it, let us know what the scenario is, and I'll get an expert in and we'll talk about it and we'll hopefully help you through. And the third sort of phase of it is, as we've just discussed there, not just looking at the impacts it has on you from a well-being point of view, but also you've got to have a bit of humour. There's a lot of these incidents that you deal with, and if you haven't got a sense of humour, and a lot of the time you're laughing at yourself and what you've done. And I want to make sure that This is not a podcast that is going to bash the public services. It's not going to bash the police, the fire, the ambulance, the Bluelight Family. What it's going to do is help people, support people towards the dark days that they will see it as the dark days of retirement and walking away from an organisation. Even if it's before your retirement, if we can help, that's what we're here for. But also look at the funny side of it and have a good laugh, and hopefully end each of the podcasts with that good laugh and walking away thinking, yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. So, it's like I said, the podcasts are going to be called Life After the Pips. There will be a YouTube channel and it will be released on social media. I'm in a professional studio in Scalby, Beckview Studios, who are supporting the venture as well. So once everything's done, once we get it out there, feel free to get in touch in any way if you've got any questions, any topics that you want to talk about, or any people that you think would be beneficial to have on to interview in relation to the objectives that we're hoping to achieve through the podcasts. Thank you very much for your time.